A Werewolf Shifter Romance. Written by Amelia Hart. Chapter 1. Silver Revelation. The stone walls of the dungeon were cold against Alara's back, but she had stopped feeling it 2 days ago. Now there was only numbness, the kind that came from knowing your death was hours away. 3 days she had been here in the darkness beneath the royal castle. 3 days since they dragged her from her modest cabin at the forest's edge. Her hands still stained with blood she swore was not of her making. The beta draven was dead. That much was undeniable. His body had been found mere steps from the threshold of the home she shared with her younger sister Venna. His throat torn, his blood soaking into the earth, and Alara, foolish Alara, had tried to help him. She had pressed her hands to the wound, tried to stop the bleeding even as she knew it was too late. That was how they found her, kneeling beside a corpse, covered in his blood, looking every bit the murderer they claimed she was. She had tried to explain, tried to tell them she had returned from her work at the castle to find him already dying, already gone. But who would believe in Omega? Who would believe Alondris, invisible and insignificant, when faced with the death of the Alpha King's most trusted advisor? Venna had been arrested too. Her baby sister, only 16, who knew nothing of politics or power, who had done nothing wrong except exist in the same house as Alara. They had taken her to a different cell, and Alara had not seen her since. The guards would not tell her if Venna was safe, would not tell her anything except that they both would die at dawn. Dawn was coming soon. Alara could feel it in her bones. Though no light reached this deep beneath the fortress, the execution was set for first light, a public display in the castle courtyard. They would make an example of her, of what happened to Omegas who dared to raise a hand against their betters. Except she had not raised a hand. She had never hurt anyone in her 23 years of life. Violence was not in her nature. She was a laundress, a washerwoman, someone who scrubbed floors and washed linens and tried to keep her head down and her sister fed. She had transformed into her wolf form only 3 times in her life, and each time had been agony, her small gray wolf weak and pitiful, confirming what everyone already knew. She was Omega. She was nothing. The sound of footsteps echoed down the corridor. Multiple sets, measured and deliberate. Alara did not look up. She had learned not to hope, but then the cell door opened, and torchlight flooded in, and a voice spoke that made her blood run cold. "Leave us." It was not a request. The guards withdrew immediately, their footsteps fading. Alara finally raised her head and found herself staring at Alpha King Adrian himself. He was enormous. That was her first coherent thought. She had seen him from a distance before, of course, when she worked in the castle, but never this close. Never in the confined space of a cell where his presence seemed to fill every available inch. He stood well over 6 feet, his broad shoulders filling the doorway, his black hair falling to his shoulders, his beard neatly trimmed in the style of the warrior class. But it was his eyes that held her. Golden, intense, fixed on her with an expression she could not read. "Stand up," he said. Alara stood, though her legs trembled. She had not eaten in 3 days, had barely slept. Her dark hair was matted with dungeon filth, her dress torn and stained. She must look like exactly what they said she was. A murderer. A criminal. "You claim you did not kill Draven," Adrian said. "It was not a question." "I did not, Your Majesty." Her voice came out stronger than she expected. "I found him dying. I tried to help. An Omega. Tried to help a beta warrior." His tone was flat, unreadable. Draven was trained in combat for over 30 years. He survived the wars in the north. He killed 12 rogues single-handedly at the Battle of Iron Pass. "And you expect me to believe he was overcome by Alondris?" "I do not expect you to believe anything, Your Majesty," Alara said quietly. "I only know what is true. I did not kill him." Adrian studied her for a long moment. Then he stepped closer, and Alara forced herself not to flinch. He circled her slowly, and she felt his gaze on every inch of her, assessing, calculating. "You worked in my castle," he said. "For how long?" 5 years, Your Majesty. "And in 5 years, has anyone reported any violence from you? Any aggression?" "No, Your Majesty." Have you ever shifted in anger? Ever lost control? No, Your Majesty. I barely shift at all. Why not? Elara hesitated. It was not something she spoke about. It hurts, she admitted. The transformation. My wolf is small and weak. It brings me only pain. Show me. The words hit her like a physical blow. Your Majesty? Tomorrow at dawn, you die, Adrian said bluntly. But I do not execute my people without certainty of their guilt. Something about this does not make sense. Draven was strong. You are not, so I will see for myself what you are capable of. He moved to the door, then paused. You will transform before the court. If your wolf is as weak as you claim, if you are truly incapable of killing a beta warrior, then we will continue the investigation. If you refuse, your sister dies now, and you follow her at dawn. Elara's heart stopped. Venna, your sister, yes. Adrian's golden eyes were merciless. Make your choice, Omega. Transform and prove your weakness, or condemn you both. He left before she could respond, the door clanging shut behind him. Elara sank back against the wall, her mind reeling. Transform. Before the court. Before everyone. Her transformations were humiliating, painful things. Her wolf was barely larger than a common forest creature, gray and unremarkable, and so weak. Every time she shifted, bones grinding, muscles tearing, only to produce something pathetic and small. She had stopped trying after the third time, had learned to suppress that part of herself, to live as close to human as a shifter could manage. But for Venna, she would do it. For Venna, she would endure any humiliation. The guards came for her an hour later. They dragged her up from the dungeons, through corridors she knew from her work. But everything looked different now, threatening. The other servants averted their eyes as she passed. No one wanted to be associated with a murderer. They brought her to the castle courtyard, and Elara's breath caught. The space was packed with people. Hundreds of shifters from the court, nobles and warriors, alphas and betas, all gathered to witness her final moments. Torches blazed against the pre-dawn darkness, casting dancing shadows across stone walls that had stood for centuries. At the center of it all was the throne of Valcrest, carved from a single massive stone that predated even the castle itself. It was said to be older than memory, placed here by the gods themselves, and seated upon it was Adrian, the Alpha King, watching her with those unreadable golden eyes. The guards forced her to her knees in the center of the courtyard. The crowd pressed close, their voices a low murmur of anticipation. Elara searched the faces for Venna, desperate for one glimpse of her sister, but she could not find her in the sea of strangers. Elara of House Nun, you stand accused of the murder of Beta Draven, advisor to the crown. The voice belonged to an older man Elara recognized as the court's high steward. The Alpha King, in his mercy, has granted you the opportunity to prove your innocence. You will shift before this court. If your wolf is incapable of such violence, your sentence will be postponed pending further investigation. If you refuse, or if your wolf shows capability for murder, the sentence will be carried out immediately. Do you understand? I understand, Elara said. Her voice sounded very small in the vast courtyard. Then, shift. Elara looked up at the sky. The moon was still visible, though dawn was creeping at the edges of the horizon. The moon had always made it worse, had always made the transformation more agonizing. But there was no choice now. For Venna. Everything for Venna. She closed her eyes and reached for that buried part of herself. The wolf she had tried so hard to ignore. Pain hit her immediately, sharp and white-hot, radiating from her core outward. She gasped, her hands hitting the stone, her body convulsing. The crowd's murmur grew louder, excited, anticipating the spectacle. But something was different this time. The pain was there. Yes, but beneath it was something else. Something vast and powerful. Something that had been sleeping for so long she had forgotten it existed. It surged upward, responding to her desperation, to her need, to the moon hanging fat and full above her. Elara screamed as her bones began to break and reform, but they did not shrink. They expanded. Her body did not diminish. It grew. The crowd's murmur died into shocked silence. When the transformation finally completed, Alara stood on 4 legs and opened eyes that saw the world with crystalline clarity. She was huge, as large as any alpha she had ever seen, maybe larger, and her fur was not gray. It was silver, pure, gleaming silver that seemed to catch the moonlight and reflect it back 100-fold. For a heartbeat, no one moved. No one breathed. And then something impossible happened. The throne of Valcrest began to crack. The sound was like thunder, sharp and deafening in the silent courtyard. Fissures spread across the ancient stone, and from within them, light poured forth. Silver light, the same shade as Alara's fur, spilling across the throne's surface in veins of pure radiance. Someone in the crowd screamed, and then an old woman pushed forward, her white hair wild, her green eyes wide with recognition and terror. Alara recognized her. Milas, the castle's healer, ancient and wise and rarely seen outside her chambers. "Silverborn!" Milas's voice rang out across the courtyard, cracked with age but powerful. "The Silver One! The royal line returns!" Chaos erupted. Half the court dropped to their knees, heads bowed as if compelled by instinct. The other half recoiled in fear, stumbling over each other in their haste to get away. Voices rose in confusion, in terror, in awe. But Alara barely heard them. She was focused on Adrian. The Alpha King had not moved from his throne, but his expression had changed. The golden eyes that had been unreadable were now sharp with something that might have been recognition, might have been fear, might have been hunger. The silver bloodline had been destroyed 25 years ago. Everyone knew the story. The traitor royal family, executed for conspiracy against the Alpha Council. Every single member of the house put to death, their line extinguished, their lands and titles scattered. There should not be any survivors. There could not be any survivors. But the throne knew. The ancient stone that had stood silent for a generation was reacting now, recognizing the blood of its true rulers. And everyone in the courtyard knew what that meant. Alara, the Omega Laundress, the nobody, the accused murderer, was royalty. She carried the blood of the Silver Queens. And everything, absolutely everything, had just changed. Chapter 2. Buried Memories. The tower room was nothing like the dungeon. Alara stood at the narrow window, staring out at the castle grounds below, trying to understand how her world had shattered and reformed in the span of a single night. She was no longer in chains, no longer condemned to death. But she was not free either. The door was guarded. Her movements were restricted to this single chamber, circular and isolated at the top of the eastern tower. The transformation back to human form had been easier than any she had experienced before, as if her body finally recognized what it was meant to be. But the memory of her silver wolf remained vivid in her mind. The size of her, the power, the way the ancient throne had responded to her presence. Even now, hours later, she could hardly believe it had happened. The door opened without warning. Alara spun, her heart racing, but it was not guards who entered. It was Milas, the old healer, her arms full of clean linens and what appeared to be medical supplies. Behind her came 2 younger women carrying a wooden tub and buckets of steaming water. "The Alpha King has ordered that you be examined," Milas said without preamble, "and that you be made presentable. Sit." Alara sat on the edge of the narrow bed while the servants prepared a bath. She watched Milas carefully. The old woman's face was weathered, lined with decades of life, but her green eyes were sharp and calculating. She had been the one to cry out that word in the courtyard. Silverborn. Silver. Once the servants departed, closing the door behind them, Milas turned to Alara with an expression that bordered on wonder. "Strip and get in the bath," she commanded. "We need to talk, and there is little time before others come demanding answers you do not yet have." Alara obeyed, too exhausted and confused to argue. The hot water was heaven against her filthy skin, washing away days of dungeon grime. Milas worked methodically, checking Alara's vitals, examining her eyes, her hands, the nape of her neck where fine hairs grew. "How much do you remember of your childhood?" Milas asked quietly. Very little, Ilara admitted. Fragments. Nightmares, I always thought. A different place, larger than the cabin. Voices shouting. Fire. Someone hiding me in a chest. She hesitated. My mother, I think. A woman with dark hair holding me, telling me to be silent. Malis nodded slowly. You were 3, perhaps 4 years old when it happened. Young to remember much, but old to forget entirely. The mind protects us from trauma in strange ways. When what happened? Ilara demanded. What is Silverborn? Why did the throne react to me? Because you are one of them, Malis said simply. She pulled a stool close to the tub and sat with a heavy sigh. The Silver bloodline. The original royal family of Valcrest. They ruled this kingdom for 1,000 years before the current dynasty. Your ancestors built this castle, forged the throne from sacred stone, established the laws that still govern us today. Ilara's hands gripped the edge of the tub. But they were traitors. They were executed for conspiracy against the Alphas. That is what the history books say now. Malis agreed. But I am old, child. Old to remember when those books were rewritten. 25 years ago, the Silver family was declared treasonous. Evidence was presented before the Alpha Council. Documents showing plans to overthrow the established order, to seize absolute power, to enslave the Beta and Omega classes. The entire family was executed publicly in this very courtyard. Men, women, teenagers, all put to death for their crimes. But, Ilara prompted, hearing the unspoken contradiction. But the youngest children were spared. The God's law is absolute on this point. Any child who has not yet experienced their first transformation, which occurs between 13 and 16 years of age, is protected by divine decree. To kill such a child is to invite a curse upon yourself and your bloodline, a curse that extends for 7 generations. Even those who orchestrated the executions feared that ancient law. So the babies and toddlers were spared, sold as servants to families far from court, stripped of their names and histories, raised to believe they were common-born. The water had gone cold, but Ilara barely noticed. You are saying I am one of those children. The throne does not lie, Milas said. Only true silver blood can make it respond. The sacred stone recognizes its rightful rulers. When you transformed, when your true nature was revealed, it knew. We all knew. She leaned forward. Your eyes alone should have given you away. That shade of blue, glacial and bright. It was the mark of the Silver bloodline, distinct from any other family in the kingdom. I wondered when I saw you working in the castle why no one else noticed. But people see what they expect to see. And no one expected a royal to be scrubbing their floors. Ilara climbed out of the bath on shaking legs. Malis wrapped her in clean linen, then helped her into a simple dress that had been left on the bed. It was finer than anything Ilara had ever worn. Soft fabric that did not scratch. Dyed a pale gray that brought out the blue of her eyes. My sister, Ilara said suddenly. Venna. She was arrested with me. Where is she? In another cell, separated from you. Malis's expression softened slightly. She is your sister in love, child, but not in blood. The family who bought you, who raised you as their own. They had a daughter 5 years after they took you in. Venna knows no other life, no other family. She believes you to be her true sister. The revelation should have hurt more than it did. But Ilara had always known, on some level, that she was different, that she did not quite fit with the family who raised her. They had been kind, in their way, but distant. And when they died of fever 3 years ago, it had been Ilara who supported herself and Venna through her work at the castle. She is still my sister, Ilara said firmly. Blood or not, I need to know she is safe. For now, she is. The Alpha King has forbidden anyone from touching her until the investigation is complete. Malis stood, gathering her supplies. But understand this, Ilara. Your existence changes everything. There are many in this court who benefited from the fall of the Silver family. Many who hold power now that once belonged to your blood. Some of them will see you as a threat to be eliminated. Others will see you as a tool to be used. And a precious few might see you as exactly what you are, the lost heir to a stolen throne. A knock at the door interrupted them. Mylis answered it, speaking in low tones with whoever stood outside, then returned. "The Alpha King comes. He wants to speak with you. Alone." Ilara's pulse quickened. She had not spoken to Adrian since the courtyard, since her transformation. What did he want? What did he think of her now? Mylis left, and moments later, Adrian entered. He seemed even larger in the small tower room, his presence overwhelming. He studied her in silence, his golden eyes moving over her clean face, her styled hair, the dress that made her look less like a servant and more like something else entirely. "Do you remember me?" he asked finally. The question surprised her. "Your Majesty?" "From before. From the castle. Did you ever see me during your years of service?" "From a distance, Your Majesty," Ilara said carefully. "I kept to the servant quarters, the laundry. I was not permitted in the halls when the court was present. But I saw you." His voice was quiet, almost reflective. 3 months ago, you were carrying linens through the east corridor, your head down, trying to be invisible. I remember thinking your eyes were unusual. Striking. I asked one of the servants who you were, and they told me you were nobody. Just an Omega washerwoman. He stepped closer. That bothered me. The dismissal. Something about it felt wrong. Ilara did not know what to say. The idea that the Alpha King had noticed her, had asked about her, seemed impossible. "You told me you did not kill Draven," Adrian continued. "I believe you. An Omega, even a Silverborn Omega, would not have the training or strength to overcome a warrior of his caliber. Which means someone else did. Someone who had reason to want him dead and you blamed for it. The investigation," Ilara began, "has revealed interesting things." Adrian's expression darkened. Draven's body disappeared from the mortuary chambers before the healers could complete their examination. The witnesses who claimed to see you fleeing the scene have vanished from the city entirely. Someone orchestrated this very carefully. Someone with resources and influence. "But why?" Ilara demanded. "Why would anyone target me? I am nobody. I was nobody. A laundress. I knew nothing of my heritage. That is what I intend to discover." Adrian moved to the window, staring out at the courtyard below where the throne still bore its silver cracks. "But while I investigate, you are in danger. Someone wants you dead, and they came very close to achieving that goal. If I had not demanded you transform, if the throne had not responded, you would have died at dawn, and no one would have questioned it." "What happens now?" Ilara asked. "Now the court is in chaos," Adrian said bluntly. "Half believe you are a sign from the gods. The rightful queen returned. The other half believe you are an impostor using dark magic to deceive us. My cousin Braxton is already calling for your immediate execution, claiming you are a threat to the stability of the realm." He turned back to face her. "And he is not entirely wrong. Your existence does threaten stability. It raises questions about the legitimacy of the current ruling family, about what really happened 25 years ago. "I do not want a throne," Ilara said desperately. "I do not want power or politics. I just want my sister safe. I want to clear my name. What you want and what you are may be two different things." Adrian's gaze was intense, searching. "But for now, you will remain here, under guard, for your protection as much as anything else. Mylis will teach you what you need to know about your heritage, and I will find out who murdered Draven and why they wanted you to take the blame." He moved toward the door, then paused. When he spoke again, his voice was different. Quieter, almost uncertain. "My wolf has been restless since your transformation, agitated in a way I have never experienced. It wants to be near you, to protect you. I do not understand it." Ilara's breath caught. She had heard of such things, the way wolves sometimes responded to certain individuals. But she did not understand it either. "Stay in this room," Adrian commanded, his voice returning to its usual authority. "Do not leave for any reason. If anyone tries to enter besides Mylis or myself, scream. The guards have orders to respond immediately." He left, the door closing firmly behind him. Ilara sank onto the bed, her mind spinning with everything she had learned. She was not who she thought she was. Her entire life had been a lie, a cover story to hide royal blood, and now that truth was exposed. She had become a target. But beneath the fear, beneath the confusion, was something else. A question she could not quite articulate. If she was Silverborn, if her wolf was truly that powerful, what else had been suppressed all these years? What else might she be capable of? The moon was rising outside her window, full and bright. Alara stared at it and felt something stir within her. That same vast power she had touched during her transformation. It was still there, waiting, just beneath her skin. And somehow, she knew her life would never be simple again. Chapter 3. Forced Alliance. The attack came on the third night. Alara woke to the sound of breaking glass. She rolled from the bed by instinct, hitting the floor hard as something whistled through the air where her head had been moments before. A crossbow bolt embedded itself in the wooden headboard with a solid thunk. She opened her mouth to scream, but hands clamped over her face, dragging her backward. Not one attacker. Multiple. They had come through the window, scaled the tower wall in darkness, and now they were going to finish what they had started when they killed Draven. Alara fought. She clawed and kicked and tried to shift, tried to call on that silver wolf that had saved her in the courtyard, but her body would not obey. The transformation would not come. Locked away by panic and inexperience. She was just a woman again, small and weak, facing trained killers in the dark. Then the door exploded inward. Adrian came through in his wolf form, massive and black as midnight, his golden eyes blazing with fury. He hit the nearest attacker with enough force to shatter bones, his jaws closing around the man's throat before the assassin could even scream. Blood sprayed across the floor. The other assassins turned to face this new threat, but they were too slow. Adrian was already moving, a blur of black fur and savage efficiency. He moved through them with the skill of someone who had been fighting since childhood, who knew exactly where to strike to kill quickly, and without mercy. Alara scrambled backward until her shoulders hit the wall, watching the carnage unfold. 4 attackers, all betas, she realized, seeing their medium builds, their coordinated movements. These were not random criminals. These were trained soldiers, sent with a specific purpose. The last one tried to run. Adrian caught him before he reached the shattered window, dragging him down by the leg. The man's scream cut off abruptly as massive jaws closed around his spine. Then it was over. 4 bodies cooling on the floor. Adrian shifted back to human form in one fluid motion, standing naked and blood-spattered in the moonlight streaming through the broken window. He looked at Alara, his chest heaving, his eyes still holding that feral edge. "Are you hurt?" Alara shook her head. She could not find words. The violence had been so sudden, so absolute. Guards poured into the room, weapons drawn, but they stopped short at the scene before them. Adrian barked orders, sending some to secure the tower, others to search for any additional threats. He grabbed a cloak from one of the guards and wrapped it around himself, then crossed to Alara and pulled her to her feet. "Can you walk?" "Yes," she managed. "Then come. You cannot stay here. It is not secure." He led her through corridors she barely registered, her mind still reeling. The guards formed a protective circle around them, weapons drawn, checking every shadow. They climbed stairs and traversed hallways until finally, Adrian pushed open a heavy door and guided her inside. His private chambers. Alara recognized them from descriptions she had heard from other servants, though she had never seen them herself. The space was vast, dominated by a massive bed and a fireplace large enough to roast a boar. Weapons lined one wall. Maps covered another. "You will stay here," Adrian said, releasing her finally. "There is an adjoining room through that door. You will sleep there. I will sleep here. Anyone who wants to reach you will have to go through me first." "Your Majesty, I cannot," Alara protested weakly. "The scandal. The court will say—" "The court can say whatever they wish. You nearly died tonight because I underestimated the threat against you. That will not happen again." He moved to a cabinet and poured something amber into 2 glasses, pressing one into her shaking hands. "Drink. It will help with the shock." Alara drank. The liquid burned down her throat, harsh and bitter, but it did help. The shaking eased slightly, and her mind began to clear. "They were betas," she said. "Trained ones. I saw the way they moved." "Yes," Adrian's expression was grim. And they bore marks. Here, he traced a pattern on his own forearm. A serpent coiled around a sword. The symbol of a group that should no longer exist. The Purists. The name meant nothing to Alara. Adrian saw her confusion and elaborated. 25 years ago, when your family was executed, there was a faction among the Alphas and Betas who believed the Silver bloodline was too powerful, that their gifts gave them unfair advantage over other shifters. They called themselves Purists, and they advocated for the complete elimination of your family. Every member, every child, every trace of Silver blood wiped from existence. But I thought the executions were for treason, Alara said. The official story, yes. But my father once told me there was more to it. He died before he could explain, but he hinted that the evidence against the Silver family might have been manufactured, that the Purists wanted them gone, not because of any crime, but simply because of what they were. Alara's hands tightened around her glass. And now the Purists have found me. If they still exist, yes, which means the conspiracy that killed your family may never have ended. It simply went underground, waiting. A knock at the door interrupted them. A guard entered, followed by a tall man with red hair and a thick beard. He wore the colors of the Royal Guard, and his bearing suggested authority. Your Majesty, the tower has been secured. We found the bodies of 2 guards on the stairwell below the ladies' room. They were killed silently, professionally. The assassins gained access through bribery or blackmail of someone with knowledge of guard rotations. The red-haired man's gaze shifted to Alara, assessing. This was not a random attack. Someone inside the castle provided information. Thank you, Torin, Adrian said. Continue the investigation. I want to know everyone who had access to the tower schedules for the past week, and bring me the body of one of the assassins. I want to examine those marks myself. Torin bowed and departed. Adrian turned back to Alara. Torin is my commander of the guard, one of the few people in this castle I trust completely. He will find out who enabled this attack. He paused. You tried to shift during the fight. Why did you fail? Shame heated Alara's cheeks. I do not know how. The transformation in the courtyard. It just happened. I cannot control it. Then you need to learn. Quickly. Adrian moved to the door of the adjoining chamber, opening it to reveal a smaller but still well-appointed bedroom. Tomorrow, Malus will begin teaching you. Not just about your heritage, but about your power. How to call your wolf at will. How to use the gifts that come with Silver blood. What gifts? Alara asked. Adrian's smile was slight, almost sad. That is for Malus to explain. She remembers your family better than anyone living. She knows what you should be capable of. He gestured toward the bedroom. Try to sleep. You are safe here. I give you my word. Alara wanted to argue, to protest that she could not possibly sleep after what had just happened. But exhaustion was pulling at her, adrenaline fading into bone-deep weariness. She went into the adjoining room and found it comfortable, warm, with a bed far softer than anything she had ever slept on before. She lay down still wearing her dress, unable to muster the energy to change. Through the open door, she could see Adrian standing by his window, staring out at the night. Even from here, she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands gripped the windowsill. His wolf wanted to protect her. That was what he had said. But Alara was beginning to wonder if it was more than just wolf instinct. The way he looked at her sometimes, when he thought she was not paying attention. The way his entire demeanor changed when she was in danger. It felt like something deeper. Something neither of them understood yet. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep, tried not to think about the bodies on her tower floor, about the people who wanted her dead, about the impossible situation she found herself in. But sleep would not come easily. Every sound made her flinch. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat. The next morning, Malus arrived before dawn. She looked unsurprised to find Alara in the king's chambers, merely nodding in approval. Good. You are harder to kill here. Come. We begin your education today, and there is much ground to cover. They worked in one of the castle's interior training rooms, a space designed for teaching young shifters to control their transformations. Malus started with the basics, explaining what Alara should have learned as a child. Common omegas have weak wolves because their bloodlines have been diluted over generations of random pairings, Malus lectured. No concentration of power, no genetic focus. But the Silver family was different. They bred for power, for purity of gift. Every generation stronger than the last. Your wolf is not weak, Alara. She never was. She was simply buried, suppressed by lack of use and understanding. How do I reach her? Alara asked. By acknowledging her, by accepting what you are. Malus circled her slowly. You have spent 23 years trying to be small, to be invisible. That ends now. Close your eyes. Feel for the wolf inside you. Not with fear, not with desperation. With recognition. She is not a separate thing. She is you. Alara closed her eyes and reached inward. At first, there was nothing. Just the familiar blankness she had always encountered when she tried to shift. But then, faintly, she felt it. That vast presence she had touched in the courtyard. It was there, waiting, patient. I feel her, Alara whispered. Good. Now understand this. The transformation hurts common shifters because their bodies are fighting between two inadequate forms. But your body was made for this. The pain you felt before was your wolf trying to emerge through layers of suppression. Let her surface naturally, and it will be different. Alara focused on that presence, that power. She did not demand it. She did not force it. She simply acknowledged it, accepted it, welcomed it. The transformation flowed through her easily this time, almost gentle. Her bones shifted without breaking. Her muscles expanded without tearing. When she opened her eyes, she was silver again, large and powerful, looking up at Malus through wolf vision. Perfect, Malus said, satisfaction in her voice. Now shift back, with the same intention. Do not fight it. Flow. Shifting back was harder, required more concentration, but Alara managed it. She stood naked in the training room, breathing hard, but without pain. I did it, she said, wonder in her voice. You will practice this daily until it becomes as natural as breathing, Malus said. But that is only the beginning. The silver bloodline had other gifts, stronger gifts. The ability to command other shifters through will alone, forcing even alphas to submit. The power to see memories through blood, enhanced healing, connection to the ancient magics that govern our kind. Can I learn those too? Perhaps, with time and training. Your grandmother could make an entire army kneel with a single word. Your grandfather could read the history of any object by touching it. The gifts manifest differently in each Silverborn, but they are always there, waiting to be unlocked. They trained through the morning, Malus pushing Alara to transform again and again until it became second nature. By midday, Alara could shift and reverse the shift in under a minute. Smooth and controlled. Enough for today, Malus said finally. You have made remarkable progress. But there is something else you must do. Something that has been delayed too long. What? You must see your sister. Alara's heart leaped. Venna? I can see her? The Alpha King has permitted it. Under heavy guard, of course. She is in a cell in the East Wing. Not the dungeons, but not comfortable either. She has been frightened, confused, kept apart from you without explanation. She deserves to know you are alive. They went together, accompanied by 6 guards. The cell was small but clean, with a narrow bed and a barred window. Venna sat on that bed, her brown hair tangled, her face pale with fear. When she saw Alara, she jumped up with a cry of relief. Alara! They would not tell me anything, would not say if you were alive or dead. What is happening? Why are we still here? The guard allowed Alara to enter the cell. She wrapped her arms around Venna, holding her sister tightly, breathing in her familiar scent. Venna was thinner, trembling, clearly terrified. I am so sorry, Alara whispered. I am so sorry you were dragged into this. They say Draven is dead, that you killed him. But that cannot be true. Tell me it is not true. I did not kill him, Alara said firmly. But proving that has become complicated. She pulled back, looking into Venna's frightened eyes. How much should she explain? How much could a 16-year-old girl understand about royal bloodlines and ancient conspiracies? Something happened during my trial. Alara began carefully. Something that changed everything. I discovered that I am not who we thought I was. The family that raised us, they bought me when I was a small child. My real family was different, important, and now people are trying to kill me because of it. Venna's eyes widened. What do you mean? What family? The Silver family, Malus interjected quietly from the doorway. Your sister is royal-born, child. Lost royalty, but royalty nonetheless. And that makes her very dangerous to very powerful people. Venna looked between them, confusion warring with disbelief. That is impossible. You are my sister. You have always been my sister. We shared a home, a life. How can you suddenly be royalty? Blood does not change what we are to each other, Alara said, gripping Venna's hands. You are still my sister. You always will be. But right now, I need to tell you something important. Something that might help us both. What? On the night Draven died. Did you see anything? Hear anything? I was at the castle working late. You were home alone. When I arrived, he was already dying. But someone killed him. Someone who wanted me to be blamed. Venna's face scrunched with concentration. I was asleep at first. But then something woke me. Voices outside. I got up and looked through the window, and I saw a man leaving, just walking away from our cabin into the forest. Did you see his face? No. It was too dark, but I saw his hand. He wore a ring. I remember because it caught the moonlight. Silver, I think, with a symbol on it. A serpent, coiled around something. It looked like it was moving in the light, and it frightened me. Alara turned to look at Malus, and the old woman's expression had gone very still. A serpent. The same symbol the assassins had borne. That ring, Malus said quietly. It was the symbol of House Draven. A family crest passed from father to son. If Venna saw someone wearing that ring after Draven's supposed death, it means one of two things. Either the killer took it from Draven's body, or Draven was alive when he left the cabin. Alara finished. He staged his own death and tried to frame me for it. But why would Draven do such a thing? What did he gain by faking his murder and blaming an insignificant Omega laundress? Unless he had somehow known what she was. Unless the entire thing had been designed to force her to reveal herself, to transform publicly so that her true nature would be exposed, and she could be eliminated under the guise of lawful execution. I need to tell Adrian, Alara said. This changes everything. They left Venna with promises to return soon, to keep her safe. Alara's mind raced as they walked back through the castle corridors. If Draven had known about her heritage, who had told him? Who else knew? And if he had gone to such elaborate lengths to expose and kill her, was he working alone or as part of a larger conspiracy? When they reached Adrian's chambers, they found him in conference with Torin. Both men looked up as Alara entered, and she saw the grim expressions on their faces. We have a problem, Adrian said without preamble. Braxton has been gathering support among the Alphas. He is calling for an emergency council session, demanding your immediate execution on grounds of sorcery and deception. He claims you are using dark magic to deceive the throne, that your transformation was an illusion designed to create chaos. Can he do that? Alara asked. He can try, Torin said. And he has enough support that the king cannot simply dismiss the request. The council will convene in 3 days. You will be required to defend yourself, to prove your heritage is real. But I have information, Alara protested, about Draven, about what really happened that night. Adrian listened intently as she explained what Venna had seen. When she finished, his expression had darkened to something dangerous. If Draven faked his death, if he is still alive and orchestrating this, then we are dealing with something far more complex than a simple murder. He looked at Torin. Send out trackers, quietly. Search the forests north of the city. If Draven is alive, he cannot have gone far. There is more, Malus added. The ring Venna described. The serpent symbol. It matches the marks the assassins bore, which suggests Draven may be connected to the Purists, may even be leading them. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. If Draven was alive, if he was working with the purists, if he had somehow discovered Alara's true heritage and engineered her exposure to create justification for her execution, then this conspiracy went far deeper than anyone had realized. "We have 3 days," Adrian said finally. 3 days to find evidence, to prepare your defense, to convince the council that you are what you appear to be. And 3 days to figure out what Draven is planning and why he wants you dead badly to orchestrate this elaborate scheme. He crossed to where Alara stood and looked down at her, his golden eyes intense. "I meant what I said. You are under my protection now. Whatever comes, whatever the council decides, I will not let them harm you. On my life, I swear it." Alara should have felt comforted by those words. Instead, she felt the weight of them, the promise they represented. Adrian was binding himself to her fate, risking his throne and his life for a woman he barely knew. But as she looked up at him, at the fierce determination in his eyes, she realized something that should have terrified her. She did not want him to fight her battles alone. She wanted to stand beside him. And that desire had nothing to do with duty or gratitude. Something was building between them, something neither of them had named yet. But it was there, undeniable and growing stronger with each passing day. Her wolf recognized his wolf, called to it in ways she did not understand. And in 3 days, everything would come to a head. The council would demand answers, Draven would make his move, and Alara would have to decide who she was going to be. The frightened laundress who hid from her nature, or the Silver Queen who faced it head-on. The choice, she realized, had already been made. From the moment the throne cracked and recognized her blood, there was no going back. Chapter 4. Blood Truth. Draven walked into the throne room alive. Alara was standing beside Adrian when it happened, going over testimony for the upcoming council session. When the doors opened and the impossible occurred, the man whose death had started everything, whose blood had stained her hands and condemned her to the dungeon, strode into the hall with perfect confidence. He looked exactly as she remembered. Gray hair, cold brown eyes, the scar cutting across his weathered face. He wore the robes of his station as Beta advisor, and behind him came a contingent of guards and several high-ranking alphas. His expression was calm, almost pleasant, as he bowed to the throne. "Your Majesty, forgive my absence these past days. I have been gathering evidence of a conspiracy that threatens the very foundation of our kingdom." Adrian had gone very still beside Alara. She could feel the tension radiating from him, barely controlled fury held in check by royal discipline. "Explain yourself, Draven. You were declared dead. Your body was found. How do you stand before me now? A deception, Your Majesty, but not of my making." Draven's voice carried through the hall, measured and reasonable. "I was attacked that night near the cabin of this woman." He gestured toward Alara without looking at her. "I managed to wound my attacker and escape into the forest to tend my injuries. When I returned the next morning, I discovered I had been declared murdered, and this Omega arrested for my death. I realized then that I had stumbled upon something far more dangerous than a simple assault. You stayed hidden for days while an innocent woman faced execution." Adrian's voice was deadly quiet. "I used those days to investigate, Your Majesty, to follow the threads of conspiracy back to their source." Draven finally turned to look at Alara, and his eyes held nothing but cold calculation. This woman is not what she appears. She is part of a plot to destabilize the kingdom, to resurrect the dead Silver Line, and use it as a weapon against the established order. "That is a lie," Alara said, her voice stronger than she felt. "You know it is a lie." "Do I?" Draven pulled documents from his robes, spreading them on a nearby table. "I have here correspondence between this woman and agents of the Northern Territories. Plans to reveal her heritage at a moment of maximum chaos. Instructions on how to deceive the throne, to make it appear to respond to her presence through dark magic and trickery." "Those documents are false," Adrian said flatly. "Alara cannot read or write beyond her own name. She was a laundress. She had no contact with foreign agents. Or so she would have you believe, Your Majesty. But consider the convenience of her story. An Omega nobody, suddenly revealed to be lost royalty at the exact moment she faces execution for murder. The throne cracks at her transformation, something that has not occurred in a generation. Is that not suspicious? Is that not exactly the kind of theatrical display one would engineer to create legitimacy? Murmurs rose through the assembled courtiers. Alara could see doubt spreading across faces that had been neutral before. Draven was skilled at this, she realized. He was taking the truth and twisting it, making the miraculous seem sinister. The throne does not lie, Malys said, stepping forward from where she had been observing. I am old, Draven. Old to remember when the Silver family ruled. I saw the throne respond to them then, and I saw it respond to this girl. That is not magic. That is blood recognition, built into the sacred stone by the gods themselves. Or you are part of the conspiracy, Draven said smoothly. You were, after all, healer to the Silver family before their execution. Perhaps you have spent 25 years waiting for an opportunity to resurrect their line, to reclaim power you lost when they fell. You go too far, Adrian said, his voice sharp with warning. Malys has served this castle faithfully for 40 years. Her loyalty is beyond question. Is it, Your Majesty? Or have we all been deceived? Draven's expression was sorrowful, regretful. I take no pleasure in this revelation. But the evidence is clear. This woman is an impostor, using dark arts to create the illusion of royal heritage. She should be executed not for my murder, which did not occur, but for the far greater crime of attempting to overthrow the rightful order. Braxton chose that moment to speak up from his position among the alphas. I must agree with Beta Draven. The appearance of a supposed silver heir at this particular moment is too convenient. We should investigate thoroughly before accepting her claims. The council will convene as planned, Adrian said coldly. But until then, both Alara and Draven will remain in the castle under guard. If there is a conspiracy here, we will uncover it. But I will not condemn anyone on forged documents and convenient timing. Of course, Your Majesty. Draven bowed again, and Alara saw the faintest hint of satisfaction in his expression. He had accomplished what he came to do. He had planted doubt, created division, made her revelation seem like a plot rather than destiny. The council dispersed slowly, alphas and betas talking in hushed groups, casting glances toward Alara that ranged from suspicious to hostile. Adrian dismissed the remaining courtiers with a gesture, leaving only himself, Alara, Malys, and Torin in the throne room. He is lying, Alara said once they were alone. Everything he said was a lie. I have never communicated with foreign territories. I have never plotted against anyone. Until a week ago, I did not even know I was Silverborn. I know, Adrian said. But he has support. Too much support. Half the alphas in this court benefit from the current power structure. The thought of the Silver Line returning threatens their positions, their lands, their influence. They want to believe Draven's story because it gives them justification to eliminate you. Then what do we do? Alara asked. Malys had been silent, her expression distant and thoughtful. Now she spoke, her voice heavy with old memory. There is a way to prove the truth. But it is dangerous, perhaps deadly. The Silver family had a gift beyond their wolves, beyond their command. They could see truth through blood. If Alara touches blood spilled in violence, blood that remembers the moment of its spilling, she can see what happened. She can witness the memories held within it. The blood from the night of the massacre, Adrian said slowly. When the Silver family was executed, it was preserved as evidence, sealed in the royal vault. If Alara could touch it, see what truly happened that night, she could see who ordered it, Malys finished. She could see if the charges against her family were real or manufactured, and the council would be forced to accept that truth, because blood memories cannot lie. But you said it was dangerous, Alara said. The gift is powerful, but it requires strength of will and strength of blood. If your silver heritage is weak, if you cannot channel the power properly, it will kill you. The memories will overwhelm your mind, shatter your consciousness. You will die screaming, lost in visions of the past. The room fell silent. Alara looked at each of them in turn. Malys, ancient and wise, watching her with something like pity. Torin, loyal and steady, his hand resting on his sword hilt, And Adrian, his golden eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Do not do this," Adrian said quietly. "There must be another way. We can investigate Draven's claims, prove them false through conventional means." "And how long will that take?" Alara asked. "Days? Weeks? While Braxton gathers more support, while Draven spreads more lies, while half the court becomes convinced I am an imposter? No. If there is a way to prove the truth absolutely, I must take it. Even if it kills you?" "Yes." Alara met his gaze steadily. "I will not live as a liar. I will not let Draven win through deception. Whatever I am, whatever my blood truly holds, I need to know. The kingdom needs to know." Something passed between them in that moment, some wordless communication that went deeper than language. Adrian's jaw tightened, his hands clenching at his sides. But finally he nodded. "Then we do it tonight, in the temple, where the blood relics are kept. Malus will guide you. Torin and I will witness. And if this goes wrong, if you start to fail, I will pull you back before the visions can kill you. You cannot," Malus warned. "Once the connection is made, breaking it prematurely could be as deadly as letting it continue. The only way to survive is to see the vision through to its end. Then she will survive," Adrian said with absolute conviction, "because I will not accept any other outcome." They prepared as the sun set. Alara bathed and dressed in simple white robes that Milas provided, traditional garments for sacred rituals. Her hands shook as she tied the sash, and she had to try 3 times before she succeeded. She was terrified. She would not pretend otherwise. But she was also determined. The temple was ancient, older than the castle itself, carved into the bedrock beneath the fortress. They descended through passages lit by torches, past chambers dedicated to various gods, until they reached a vault sealed with iron and holy symbols. Torin opened it with a key he wore on a chain around his neck, revealing shelves lined with relics from the kingdom's history. The blood was kept in a crystal vial, dark and thick, despite 25 years of preservation. Malus handled it with reverence, carrying it to an altar in the center of the chamber. She placed it carefully on the stone surface, then turned to Alara. "Once you touch this, the visions will come. You will see what happened that night, as if you were there. Do not fight it. Do not try to pull away. Let it flow through you, and when it is finished, release it. Can you do this?" "I do not know," Alara admitted. "But I will try." She approached the altar slowly, each step feeling heavy. Adrian stood to one side, his expression carved from stone, but she could see the tension in his body, the way his hands flexed as if preparing to grab her. Torin flanked the other side, silent and watchful. Alara reached out and placed her fingertips against the crystal vial. Pain hit her like lightning. She gasped, her body going rigid as the world around her disappeared and another world, another time, rushed in to replace it. She was standing in the courtyard. The same courtyard where she had transformed, but different. Younger, 25 years younger. Dawnlight was breaking over the castle walls, and the space was packed with people. But these people were not courtiers. They were prisoners. Alara saw them clearly. Men, women, teenagers, all bearing the mark she now recognized in her reflection. Dark hair, glacial blue eyes, the unmistakable features of the silver bloodline. They were chained, forced to their knees in rows before the throne, and standing beside that throne was a younger version of Draven. His hair still held some brown among the gray, his face unlined, but it was unmistakably him, and he was not alone. A dozen alphas stood with him, including faces Alara recognized from the current court. They wore the serpent symbol openly, proud of their allegiance. "By order of the Alpha Council," younger Draven announced, his voice ringing across the courtyard, "the House of Silver is found guilty of treason, conspiracy, and attempted overthrow of the lawful government. The sentence is death for all members above the age of first transformation. The youngest children will be sold into service, their names and heritage stripped away, never to return. This is murder." A woman's voice, strong despite her chains. Alara focused on her and felt her breath stop. The woman could have been Alara's twin. The same face, the same eyes, but older, regal, defiant, even in chains. Her mother. This was her mother. You have no proof, Alara's mother continued. The documents you present are forgeries. We have done nothing but exist, and you fear us for it. You fear our power, our legitimacy. So you invent crimes to justify genocide. The proof has been examined and accepted, Draven said coldly. Your family has plotted with the Northern Territories to divide this kingdom. You have accumulated weapons and trained soldiers in secret. You plan to seize the throne by force and enslave the other bloodlines under Silver rule. These are facts. These are lies. Another Silver stood, a man with broad shoulders and a warrior's build. Alara's father. And you know it, Draven. You manufactured this evidence. You and your purists have wanted us gone since before I was born. This is not justice. This is extermination. Draven's expression did not change. Execute them. What followed was butchery. Alara tried to close her eyes, to look away, but the vision would not allow it. She was forced to watch as her family, her blood, was systematically slaughtered. She saw her mother die protecting younger siblings, saw her father cut down while trying to break his chains, saw teenagers beheaded, their blood soaking into the courtyard stones. And through it all, Draven watched with cold satisfaction. But there was more. The vision pulled her deeper, showing her what came after. Showed her Draven meeting with the purest alphas in secret chambers, dividing Silver lands among themselves. Showed him burning documents, real documents, that proved the Silver family's innocence. Showed him finding a small girl child, perhaps 3 years old with distinctive blue eyes, and making the decision not to kill her because of the divine law against harming children before first transformation. Showed him selling that child to a poor family on the kingdom's edge, never expecting her to survive to adulthood, never imagining she would one day return to threaten everything he had built. And then the vision jumped forward, years forward, to a conversation between Draven and an older man. Alara recognized him from paintings in the castle. Adrian's father, the previous king. The old king confronted Draven with evidence of the conspiracy, had somehow discovered proof of what had truly happened 25 years ago. Draven's face went pale, then hard. You cannot reveal this. The kingdom would tear itself apart. The kingdom was built on a lie, the old king said. I will not perpetuate it. Draven moved. A vial appeared in his hand, and he pressed it to the old king's lips, forcing liquid down his throat. Poison. The vision showed the king dying slowly over the next week, everyone believing it was natural illness, while Draven watched and ensured no healer got close to discover the truth. The vision released her suddenly, violently. Alara found herself on the floor of the temple, Adrian holding her against his chest, his face pale and stricken. She was shaking, tears streaming down her face. But she was alive. The visions had not killed her. She was strong to survive them. I saw it, she gasped. I saw everything. Draven killed them, all of them. And he murdered your father, Adrian. He poisoned him to keep the truth hidden. Adrian's arms tightened around her. She felt wetness on his face and realized he was crying too, silently, his body shaking with barely contained rage and grief. The visions were shared. Malus said softly. We all saw through the blood. We all witnessed what truly happened. Torin stood frozen, his expression horrified. My oath. I swore an oath to serve the crown, to protect the kingdom. That man murdered his king. He destroyed an entire family. He has been advising the throne for 25 years while hiding these crimes. He will answer for them, Adrian said, his voice raw. Before the gods and the council, he will answer for everything. He looked down at Alara, his golden eyes bright with unshed tears, and something deeper. You survived. I did not think you would, but you did. Alara reached up and touched his face, unable to stop herself. You are crying. I just watched my father be murdered, Adrian said quietly. I just learned that the man I trusted, the man who helped raise me after my father died, is the one who killed him. Yes, I am crying. Something shifted between them in that moment. Some final wall crumbling. Alara felt it snap into place. a connection that went soul deep. Her wolf recognized his wolf, called to it, and his wolf answered with a hunger that both of them had been denying. "This is the mate bond," Melis said, her voice gentle. "It has been forming since you first met, but now it awakens fully. You are mates, chosen by fate and blood. We cannot," Adrian said. But his arms did not release Alara. "The political complications. If I claim her now, the court will say I am doing it to consolidate power, to combine the bloodlines. The court can think what it wishes," Alara said. She felt stronger now, the mate bond feeding her strength, giving her courage. "We have proof of Draven's crimes. We have witnesses who saw the blood memories. The truth will come out. And when it does," Torin added, his voice grim, "there will be war. The Alphas who supported Draven, who benefited from the fall of the Silver family, they will not accept this revelation peacefully. They have too much to lose." Adrian stood, pulling Alara up with him. "Then let there be war. I will not protect murderers and traitors, regardless of their rank. Draven will face justice, and Alara's heritage will be acknowledged, mate bond or not." They left the temple together, the four of them united in purpose now. The blood had spoken. The truth was known. Tomorrow they would present it to the council, and Draven's carefully constructed lies would crumble to dust. Chapter 5. War Within Walls. Alara woke 3 days later in the infirmary, her body weak but healing. The blood vision had taken more from her than anyone anticipated. She had slept through fever dreams and trembling fits while Melis worked to stabilize her, feeding her potions and keeping watch over her recovery. The mate bond had saved her, Melis explained. When Alara's consciousness began to fracture under the weight of the visions, Adrian had completed a partial bonding, anchoring her soul to his, giving her something to hold on to in the darkness. Without it, she would have been lost. "How partial?" Alara asked, sitting up carefully. "Enough to tie your lives together, but not enough to complete the full bond. You can feel his emotions now, as he can feel yours. The connection will grow stronger over time unless you formalize it or sever it completely." Melis handed her a cup of bitter tea. "Drink. You need to regain your strength. The council convenes today." "Today?" Alara's heart jumped. "But I have been unconscious for 3 days, yes." Adrian delayed the council as long as he could, but Braxton and his supporters have been pressuring him. They want answers. They want resolution. And Draven has been busy spreading his version of events, claiming your collapse proves you used dark magic that overwhelmed you. Alara dressed quickly in clothes that had been laid out for her. Not servant garb, but fine fabric in pale silver, clearly meant to emphasize her heritage. Her hands shook as she tied the laces, but she forced them steady. Today, everything would be decided. Torin arrived to escort her to the throne room. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, his hand never leaving his sword hilt. "The castle is tense," he warned as they walked. "Draven's supporters have been gathering. They wear his serpent symbol openly now, no longer hiding their allegiance. We counted at least 40 warriors loyal to him within these walls. And how many are loyal to Adrian? Perhaps 30 we can count on absolutely. Another 20 who might support the king if pressed. The rest are neutral or too frightened to take a side." Torin's jaw tightened. "We are outnumbered in our own home." They reached the throne room to find it already packed. Every alpha and beta of rank had been summoned, and the crowd was divided clearly. On one side stood those wearing Adrian's black and gold colors. On the other, those bearing the serpent of the purists. The tension was thick, volatile, ready to ignite at the slightest spark. Adrian sat on the throne, but the sacred stone behind him was different now. The cracks had spread, silver light pulsing through them in a steady rhythm. It looked less like damage, and more like veins of precious metal, as if the throne was transforming into something new. Draven stood at the center of the room, surrounded by his supporters. He looked calm, confident, certain of his position. When Alara entered, his eyes flicked to her briefly, and she saw something dangerous there. Recognition. He knew she had survived the blood vision, knew what she had seen. "The council is convened," Adrian announced, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "We are here to address accusations made by Beta Draven regarding Alara's heritage, and to examine evidence regarding the massacre of the Silver family 25 years past. With respect, Your Majesty," Braxton interrupted, stepping forward. "We should also address the allegation that you have been compromised by this woman, that she has used her supposed gifts to manipulate you into protecting her." "I have been manipulated by no one," Adrian said coldly. "But if the council wishes to question my judgment, let us present all evidence and see where the truth lies." Draven cleared his throat. "Your Majesty, I have brought additional documentation showing—" "We have seen your documentation," Adrian cut him off. "Forgeries designed to frame an innocent woman. But we have evidence of our own. Evidence that cannot be falsified or disputed. Alara has accessed the blood memories of her family's execution. She witnessed what truly happened that night, and through the sacred ritual, we all saw it with her." Silence fell. Then chaos erupted. "Impossible!" Braxton shouted. "Blood visions are legend, fairy tales told to children." "They are real," Malis said, her voice carrying despite her age. "I have seen them performed twice in my lifetime. The silver blood holds many gifts, and this is among the most sacred. What we witnessed in that temple was truth, unfiltered and undeniable." "Then share this truth," one of the neutral alphas demanded. "If you have such evidence, present it to the council." "Very well." Adrian stood, and his presence filled the room. 25 years ago, the Silver family was executed for treason based on forged evidence. The conspiracy was led by Beta Draven, who organized the Purists and manufactured documents to justify genocide. He wanted the Silver bloodline eliminated because they represented a threat to the power structure he wished to establish. After the executions, he and his co-conspirators divided Silver lands among themselves and rewrote history to hide their crimes. "That is a lie." Draven's calm facade cracked. "You have no proof of these accusations." "I have the testimony of 3 witnesses who experienced the blood vision. Myself, Malis, and Commander Torin. We all saw what happened. We watched you lead the executions, watched you burn the evidence that would have exonerated them. And we saw something else, Draven. Something even more damning." Draven's face went pale. "We saw you murder my father," Adrian said, his voice deadly quiet. "We saw you poison him to keep him from revealing the truth about the Silver massacre. You have been a traitor to this crown for 25 years, and your crimes end today." The room exploded into shouts. Draven's supporters surged forward, hands going to weapons. Adrian's loyal guards formed a protective barrier around the throne. Alara found herself pulled behind Torin as the commander drew his sword. "You think your vision proves anything?" Draven shouted over the chaos. "You and your pet Silver have concocted a story to justify your illegal bonding. You want to combine the bloodlines to seize absolute power, and you are willing to destroy anyone who stands in your way." "This is not about power," Adrian said. "This is about justice. You murdered my father. You slaughtered an entire family. You will answer for these crimes." "And who will make me?" Draven's smile was vicious. "Your handful of loyal guards? Look around you, boy. Half this court stands with me. The Alphas see the threat Alara represents. They will not allow the Silver line to return. Then they choose treason," Adrian said flatly. "Anyone who stands with a murderer and regicide stands against the crown." The moment hung suspended, balanced on a knife's edge. Then Braxton drew his sword. "I stand with truth," he announced. "With preservation of the proper order. The Silver bloodline was eliminated for good reason, and I will not see it resurrected by a lovesick king and his Omega whore." The insult snapped something in Adrian. Alara felt it through the partial bond, a surge of rage so intense it nearly drove her to her knees. But before Adrian could move, before he could shift and tear Braxton apart, Alara stepped forward. She had been practicing with Malis, learning to call her transformation at will. She reached for her wolf now, and it came easily, flowing through her in a wave of silver light. When she stood on 4 legs, massive and gleaming, every eye in the room fixed on her. "Enough talking," she said, and her wolf's voice carried words clearly, another gift of the silver blood. "If you want war, Draven, then let us have war." But it ends now. In this room. Today. Draven's eyes widened in shock, then narrowed in calculation. He transformed as well. His gray wolf large and battle-scarred. A warrior's body honed by decades of combat. Around him, his supporters shifted, filling the hall with growls and the smell of aggression. Adrian transformed in a blur of motion, his black wolf placing itself between Alara and Draven. Torin and the loyal guards followed suit, creating a defensive line. The throne room, seat of civilized governance, became a battlefield. The fighting started with Braxton. He lunged at Adrian from the side, trying to catch the king while he was focused on Draven. But Alara was faster. She intercepted him, her larger wolf slamming into his golden-furred form with crushing force. They hit the ground in a tangle of claws and teeth. Braxton was trained, experienced, vicious. But Alara had rage on her side, fury for her murdered family, for her stolen childhood, for Venna's terror, and her own near execution. She fought with everything she had, and the silver blood sang in her veins, lending her strength she did not know she possessed. Around them, the throne room descended into chaos. Draven's forces outnumbered Adrian's, but the loyal guards were better trained, more disciplined. Blood stained ancient stones as wolf fought wolf in the confined space. Alara felt Adrian's presence through the bond, felt his determination to reach Draven, to end this personally. But too many enemies stood between them, and he was being dragged into multiple fights at once. She could feel his frustration, his fear for her safety warring with his need to protect his throne. She finished Braxton with a vicious strike to his throat, leaving him choking on his own blood. Then she fought her way toward Adrian, using her size and strength to bulldoze through smaller wolves. The silver gifts were manifesting instinctively now, her presence radiating authority that made weaker shifters hesitate, stumble, lose their nerve. She reached Adrian's side as he was surrounded by 5 of Draven's betas. Together, they fought as a unit, their movements synchronized by the mate bond, each anticipating the other's actions. It was beautiful and terrible, a dance of death that left bodies in their wake. But there were too many. For every enemy they killed, 2 more took their place. Alara felt exhaustion setting in, felt wounds accumulating despite her attempts to avoid them. Through the bond, she felt Adrian's growing desperation. Then Draven made his move. He had been hanging back, letting others do the fighting while he looked for an opening. Now he saw it. While Adrian was focused on the betas surrounding him, Draven lunged, not at the king, but at Alara. He hit her from the side, his weight and momentum carrying them both across the room. His jaws clamped down on her shoulder, and Alara screamed, the pain white-hot and overwhelming. She tried to throw him off, but he was too heavy, too strong. Through the bond, she felt Adrian's terror spike into something primal. He abandoned the fight he was in and charged toward them, but Draven's supporters blocked his path deliberately. She was alone. Draven released her shoulder to go for her throat, the killing blow. Alara twisted desperately, taking the strike on her foreleg instead. Bones cracked, blood poured. She was going to die here, killed by the same man who had murdered her family. Then something inside her broke open. It was not the transformation. It was not physical strength. It was the other gift, the one Malus had mentioned, but never explained fully. The silver command, the ability to force other shifters into submission through will alone. Alara did not know how to use it consciously. She only knew she was dying, and she refused to die without fighting back with everything she had. The command burst from her in a wave of invisible force. Every beta in the room dropped instantly, their bodies going limp, unable to resist. Even some of the weaker alphas faltered, struggling against the compulsion to submit. Only Draven remained standing, his strong beta lineage giving him resistance. But he was weakened, slowed, his body fighting itself as Alara's will battled his. Adrian reached them in that moment of hesitation. His jaws closed around Draven's neck, and he wrenched the traitor away from Alara with brutal force. Draven hit the ground hard, scrambling to regain his footing. "Flee," Adrian commanded, his wolf voice resonating with alpha authority. "Take your conspirators and flee north. You have one chance to leave this kingdom with your lives." Refuse, and I will have every single one of you executed for treason." Draven stared at him, bleeding from a dozen wounds. His supporters scattered and broken around him. The fight had turned decisively against him. His grand plan to eliminate Alara and consolidate his power had failed. "This is not over," Draven growled. "You think you have won, but you have only delayed the inevitable. The purists will not accept her. They will not accept the Silverline's return. We will gather our forces and return. Then you will die," Adrian said simply. "I will hunt you to the ends of the earth if necessary. But for now, you have 1 hour to leave this castle. After that, anyone bearing the serpent symbol will be considered an enemy of the crown." Draven transformed back to human form, naked and bloodied, his eyes fixed on Alara. "This is your fault. All of this death, this chaos. You should have stayed hidden, should have died in that dungeon. But you could not help yourself, could you? Had to reveal what you were. Had to reclaim a throne that was never yours. The throne recognized her," Adrian said. "The gods recognized her. Who are you to deny what the sacred stone itself has acknowledged?" Draven spat blood. Then he gathered those of his supporters who could still walk and left. They filed out of the throne room in defeated silence, leaving behind more than 20 bodies. The cost of their conspiracy. When they were gone, Adrian shifted back to human form and went to Alara. She was still in her wolf form, unable to shift while in such pain. Her shoulder was mangled, her foreleg broken, blood pooling beneath her. "Malus!" Adrian shouted, his hands already on Alara's fur, trying to staunch the bleeding. "Someone get Malus now!" Alara tried to speak, to tell him she was all right, but the pain was too intense. Through the bond, she felt his fear, his guilt, his desperate need to save her. And beneath that, something else. The mate bond was no longer partial. In that moment of terror when he thought he would lose her, something had completed. They were fully bonded now, tied together for life. "Do not die," Adrian whispered, his forehead pressed against her wolf's head. "Do not you dare die on me. Not when we have just begun." Alara wanted to promise she would not, but consciousness was slipping away, dragged under by blood loss and exhaustion. The last thing she felt was his hands on her, his will flowing through the bond, trying to keep her anchored to life. And then darkness claimed her completely. Chapter 6. Mountain Pursuit. The journey north took 5 days, and Alara felt stronger with each one. Her wounds had healed with unnatural speed, guided by Malus's herbs and the mate bond that tied her to Adrian. The broken foreleg was whole again, the torn shoulder merely scarred. She could shift without pain now, could feel the silver wolf inside her as natural as breathing. Venna had been released and sent to the southern estates under guard. Alara had held her sister one last time before they departed, promising to return, promising this would end soon. Venna had clung to her, terrified and confused, but ultimately trusting. That trust was part of what drove Alara north now, toward the final confrontation. Because Draven had taken Venna, they had discovered it 2 hours after the battle in the throne room, when Adrian went to transfer Venna to safer quarters. The cell was empty, the guards dead, their throats cut silently in the chaos of the fighting. Draven had planned for defeat, had positioned people to grab the one leverage he had left, Alara's sister. The message arrived the next morning, delivered by a terrified courier. Draven had fled to the frozen fort, an ancient stronghold in the northern mountains. He was gathering the remaining purists, calling in debts and promises from across the kingdom. In 2 weeks, he would have an army, and Venna would be executed publicly, unless Alara surrendered herself. Adrian had not hesitated. He assembled 50 of his best warriors, everyone who could be spared without leaving the castle defenseless. Alara insisted on joining them despite her injuries. This was her sister, her fight. She would not hide in safety while Venna suffered. They traveled fast, shifting to wolf form during the night when they could cover ground quickly, resting in defensive formations during the day. Alara's silver wolf was as large as Adrian's black now, and the warriors who had initially been skeptical of bringing the Omega with them quickly changed their minds. She fought off 2 ambushes from purist patrols, with the same ferocity she had shown in the throne room. Torin rode beside Adrian during the day, his red hair bright against the gray landscape. We have reports from scouts. Draven has gathered close to 80 warriors at the fort. We are outnumbered nearly 2-1. Unacceptable odds, one of the other warriors muttered. We should wait for reinforcements. There is no time, Adrian said flatly. In 2 weeks, Draven will have twice that number. We strike now, while we still have advantage of surprise. What advantage? The warrior pressed. They know we are coming. They are fortified in a mountain stronghold. How exactly do we have the advantage? Ilara spoke up from where she walked in her human form. They do not know I can use the Silver Command. They saw me do it once, but they do not understand the full extent of it. That is our advantage. Milas had been teaching her during their rest stops, pushing her to understand the gift that had manifested during the battle. The Silver Command was not just submission. It was compulsion, the ability to impose her will directly onto other shifters. Betas were most susceptible, their minds unable to resist the force of royal blood. Weaker alphas could be slowed, hampered. Only the strongest bloodlines had true resistance. The command will not work on all of them, Milas had warned. Draven himself proved resistant. But if you can eliminate his beta warriors, reduce his forces significantly, it gives our people fighting chance. How many can you affect at once? Torin asked now, practical as always. I do not know, Ilara admitted. In the throne room I dropped maybe 20 betas simultaneously. But I was dying at the time, running on pure instinct. I have not tried to do it deliberately since then. Then we make a plan around uncertainty, Adrian said. We approach the fort tomorrow at dusk. Ilara and I will lead a small team through the old mountain passages that Malus says the Silver family used centuries ago. We extract Venna, while the main force assaults the front gates as distraction. That is suicide, someone protested. You are the king. You cannot risk yourself on a stealth mission into enemy territory. Adrian's golden eyes were hard. I can, and I will. Venna is my mate's sister. That makes her family. I do not abandon family. The mate bond pulsed warm between them, and Ilara felt Adrian's determination, his fierce protectiveness extending not just to her, but to everyone she loved. It made her throat tight, made her realize how completely he had committed to this, to her, to their shared fate. They reached the frozen fort on the 5th day. The stronghold was ancient, built into the mountainside itself, walls of gray stone weathered by centuries of wind and snow. It had been abandoned for decades, but smoke rose from its towers now, and figures moved along the battlements. Draven had made it operational again in just days, showing the resources he had at his disposal. They made camp in a hidden ravine a mile from the fort, concealed from watchers. Adrian gathered his commanders and laid out the plan in detail. The main force would attack the gates at dusk, when vision was poor and defenders were changing shifts. They would make as much noise as possible, draw every available warrior to the walls. Meanwhile, Adrian, Ilara, and 5 handpicked soldiers would use the hidden passages to infiltrate the fortress. Malus had provided a map drawn from memory, showing tunnels that burrowed through the mountain itself, emerging inside the fort's highest tower. That was where prisoners would be kept, she said. The most secure location, hardest to escape from. Once we have Venna, we extract immediately, Adrian said. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary. Our goal is rescue, not battle. And if Draven finds us, one of the soldiers asked, then I kill him, Adrian said simply. But that is secondary to Venna's safety, understood? They all nodded. Ilara felt the tension in the group, the awareness that this was dangerous, possibly fatal. But no one backed down. These were warriors who had sworn oaths to their king, and they would follow him into death if that was what honor required. The sun began its descent toward the horizon. They moved out in 2 groups, the main force circling toward the fort's front gates, the infiltration team heading for the hidden entrance Malus had marked on her map. Finding it took longer than expected. The passage had been concealed deliberately, hidden behind rockfall and overgrowth. But eventually, they uncovered a gap in the stone barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. They would have to go in human form, unable to shift in the confined space. Adrian went first, a torch in one hand and a blade in the other. Ilara followed, then the 5 soldiers. The passage was tight, claustrophobic, and frighteningly unstable. Loose rocks shifted under their feet. The walls seemed to press inward. One of the soldiers lost his nerve halfway through and had to be physically pushed forward by those behind him. But they made it. The passage opened into a chamber deep within the mountain, and from there, ancient stairs spiraled upward. They climbed in silence, weapons drawn, every sense alert for guards or traps. They encountered the first patrol near the top. 2 beta warriors, relaxed and unprepared for attack from within. Adrian killed them both before they could raise an alarm, his movements brutal and efficient. They dragged the bodies into a side room and continued upward. The tower prison was exactly where Malus said it would be. They emerged from the stairwell into a circular room with a single heavy door, guarded by 4 more warriors. These were more alert. And when they saw Adrian, they shouted a warning and drew weapons. The fight was quick and vicious in the confined space. Ilara took down 2 of them with her blade, the training Malus had insisted on paying off. The soldiers handled the other 2. Then they were at the door, and Adrian was breaking the lock with brute strength. Venna was inside, bound to a chair in the center of the small cell. Her face was bruised, her dress torn, but she was alive. Her eyes went wide when she saw Ilara. "You came," she whispered. "I knew you would come." Ilara cut her bonds and pulled her sister into a fierce embrace. "I will always come for you. Always." "How touching," a voice said from the doorway. They spun to find Draven standing there, flanked by 10 of his best beta warriors. He looked terrible, his face haggard, his wounds from the throne room still healing. But his eyes were sharp and full of malice. "Did you really think I would not anticipate this?" Draven asked. "That I would not prepare for you to attempt rescue? I have been waiting, Adrian. Waiting for you to walk into my trap." "Then you die disappointed," Adrian said, moving to put himself between Draven and the others. "Because we are leaving with Venna, and you cannot stop us." "Perhaps not," Draven agreed, "but I can make you pay dearly for it." His warriors attacked. The tower room became a whirlwind of violence. Adrian shifted instantly, his black wolf tearing into the betas with savage fury. The soldiers fought to protect Venna and Ilara, outnumbered but determined. Ilara wanted to shift, to fight, but the space was too confined with so many bodies. She kept Venna behind her, blade out, protecting her sister while looking for an opening to use the command. Then Draven transformed. His gray wolf lunged not at Adrian, but at the soldiers guarding the stairwell. He killed one instantly, then bounded past the others, heading down. He was fleeing, abandoning his warriors to save himself. "No," Ilara shouted. She could not let him escape, could not let him gather more forces and continue this war. She shoved Venna toward one of the surviving soldiers. "Get her out! Through the passages! Go now!" Then she shifted and charged after Draven. The stairwell was narrow, treacherous for wolves their size. Ilara crashed down the steps, her claws scrabbling for purchase, chasing the gray wolf ahead of her. She heard Adrian roar behind her, felt his fury through the bond, but he was trapped fighting the remaining betas. He could not follow. Draven burst out of the tower into the fort's main courtyard. The battle was raging at the gates, Adrian's warriors clashing with purists in the fading light. Draven ran toward his own forces, clearly intending to rally them, to turn the tide. Ilara caught him before he made it. She slammed into his side with her full weight, and they went down in a tangle of fur and teeth. Draven was experienced, skilled, vicious. He fought with the desperation of someone who knew defeat meant death. His jaws snapped at her throat, her legs, anywhere vulnerable, but Ilara had something he did not. Rage. Pure, burning rage for everything he had stolen from her. Her family, her childhood, her innocence. For Venna's terror and Adrian's pain. For 25 years of lies and hidden truth. She fought with that rage fueling her, and slowly, she began to overwhelm him. She was larger, stronger, the silver blood giving her advantages he could not match. When she finally got her jaws around his throat, she felt him freeze, felt his body go still in submission. but she saw his eyes, saw the hatred there, the absolute refusal to accept defeat. He would never stop, never surrender. As long as he lived, he would plot and scheme and try to destroy her. So she ended it. Her jaws closed with crushing force, and she felt his windpipe collapse, felt his life leave him in a final shuddering breath. When she released him, the gray wolf fell to the ground, dead. The purists saw it happen, saw their leader die at the feet of the silver wolf, and something broke in them. The betas began to falter, to flee. Even some of the alphas lost their nerve, breaking away from the fight, running for the mountains. Adrian's forces pressed the advantage, driving the remaining purists back, overwhelming them. Within minutes, it was over. The frozen fort belonged to the crown again. Ilara shifted back to human form, naked and covered in blood, standing over Draven's corpse. She felt empty, hollow. She had killed the man who murdered her family, but it did not feel like victory. It felt like survival, like doing what was necessary because there had been no other choice. Then Adrian was there, shifting to human, pulling her against him. She felt his heartbeat, rapid and strong, felt his relief through the bond. He had been terrified that charging after Draven alone meant she would die. "It is over," he said against her hair. "He is dead. It is finally over." Ilara nodded, but she could not speak. Exhaustion was crashing over her, battle fatigue and emotional trauma combining. Adrian simply held her, let her shake, let her process everything. Torin approached with Venna, who had been brought out safely through the passages. Venna was crying, reaching for Ilara, and the sisters held each other, while Adrian gave orders to his warriors. Secure the fort, tend the wounded, round up the surviving purists for judgment. They found 43 prisoners among those who surrendered. Some were fanatics who spat curses and refused to bend. Others were frightened, claiming they had been coerced or deceived. Adrian ordered the fanatics executed immediately, but gave mercy to those who renounced their allegiance to Draven and the purist cause. They would serve the crown as penance, working to rebuild what they had helped destroy. It took 2 days to organize for the journey home. 2 days of rest and recovery, of tending wounds and burying dead. 12 of Adrian's 50 warriors had fallen in the battle. 12 lives spent to save one girl and eliminate a threat to the throne. On the 3rd day, they began the return journey. Ilara rode with Venna for most of it, letting her sister process everything she had endured. Venna was traumatized but resilient, already planning to return to the village where they had grown up, to use her new status as the queen's sister to help those who needed it. As they traveled, Ilara noticed people coming out of their homes to watch them pass. Word had spread quickly. The Silver Queen had returned. She had defeated the purists. The war was over. Some knelt as she passed. Others simply stared in wonder at the silver-furred wolf walking beside the black. When the castle finally came into view after a week of travel, Ilara felt something settle in her chest. Home. This place was home now, in a way her cabin never had been. She was not a laundress anymore, not a nobody. She was queen, mate to the king, last daughter of an ancient line. Adrian walked beside her in his wolf form, their shoulders touching, the mate bond humming warm and complete between them. They had survived battle and conspiracy, had emerged bloodied but victorious, and now they would build something new, something better. The castle gates opened to welcome them home, and Ilara walked through them with her head high, ready to face whatever came next. Chapter 7. Coronation and Consequence. The throne room was filled with the entire court when they arrived back at the castle, but the atmosphere was different now. Subdued, respectful. The alphas who had remained neutral during the conflict stood with heads bowed. Those who had supported Adrian looked vindicated, and the spaces where Draven's supporters once stood were conspicuously empty. Ilara walked through those assembled ranks in human form, wearing travel-stained clothes, her hair tangled and dirty from the journey. She looked nothing like a queen should look. But when she passed, people knelt, not out of fear, but out of recognition. She had proven herself through blood and battle. There was no denying her heritage now. Milas waited at the throne, her ancient face showing relief at their safe return. Beside her stood functionaries and priests, already preparing for what came next, because Adrian had made his decision clear before they even left the northern mountains. They would not wait, would not delay further. The kingdom needed stability, needed to see its rulers united and strong. Tomorrow, Adrian had said during the journey home, his hand finding Alara's in the darkness of their camp. We formalize everything tomorrow. Your coronation as Silver Queen. Our official bonding before the court. No more questions. No more challenges. Now that tomorrow had become today, Alara was whisked away to private chambers where servants bathed her, tended her remaining wounds, dressed her in robes of silver silk that seemed to shimmer with their own light. They wove silver chains through her dark hair and painted her eyes with traditional markings. When they finished, Alara barely recognized herself in the mirror. She looked like the woman from her blood visions, her mother, her grandmother, the Silver Queens who had ruled before her. The resemblance was undeniable, and it made her chest tight with grief for the family she would never know, except through ancient memories preserved in blood. Venna came to see her before the ceremony. Her sister's bruises were fading, and she wore a fine dress befitting her new station as the Queen's adopted sister. They held hands in silence for a long moment. I am going back to the village, Venna said finally. After this, Adrian has granted me lands and a title, but I want to use them to help people like us, the forgotten ones, the servants and omegas who have no voice. You will be remarkable at it, Alara said, meaning every word. You have always had the kindest heart of anyone I know, and you have always been braver than you believed. Venna replied. She touched Alara's face gently. Mother and father would be proud. Not your blood family, but the ones who raised you. They would be proud of what you have become. Alara had to blink back tears. She had been so focused on her lost royal heritage that she had nearly forgotten the simple people who had taken in a frightened child and given her a home. They deserved to be remembered too. The ceremony began as the moon rose. The entire court assembled in the great hall, packed so tightly that people stood shoulder to shoulder. Torches blazed from every wall, and the throne itself seemed to glow, silver light pulsing through its cracks in time with some ancient rhythm. Adrian stood before it in his ceremonial robes, the black and gold of his house, his crown of iron resting on his dark hair. He looked every inch the warrior king, powerful and commanding. When Alara entered the hall, his golden eyes fixed on her, and she felt the mate bond surge with emotion, pride, love, possessiveness, need. Malis conducted the ritual, her voice carrying across the silent hall. She spoke of the silver bloodline, of their 1,000-year rule, of the injustice done to them, and the miracle of Alara's survival. She recounted the blood visions, the proof of Draven's conspiracy, the righteousness of their cause. Then she called Alara forward, and the young woman climbed the steps to stand before the throne. The ancient stone pulsed brighter as she approached, recognizing her, welcoming her home. Kneel, Malis commanded. Alara knelt, bowing her head. Malis produced a crown from a locked chest. It was silver, delicate but strong, formed in the shape of intertwining vines and moonflowers. It had belonged to the last Silver Queen, Alara's grandmother, preserved in secret all these years. By the authority of blood and stone, by the witness of gods and court, I declare Alara of House Silver rightful heir to the ancient throne, queen of her bloodline, protector of the realm. Milas placed the crown on Alara's head. Rise, your majesty. Alara stood. The throne reacted immediately. The cracks spreading further, silver light exploding outward in a wave that made everyone gasp. And then something impossible happened. The throne split, right down the middle, the ancient stone dividing into 2 separate seats. One black, one silver. Side by side. Equal. The hall erupted in shocked murmurs. Malis's eyes were wide with wonder. The prophecy, she breathed. The ancient prophecy. When silver and shadow unite as equals, the kingdom shall know an age of peace. Adrian moved to stand beside Alara, taking her hand. "This is how it should be," he announced to the court. Not one ruler dictating to the other, but two working together. Two bloodlines, two thrones, one kingdom. Who here objects? Silence. No one dared speak against what the sacred stone itself had proclaimed. The bonding ritual followed immediately. Malus bound their hands with silver cord, spoke words in the old tongue that Alara barely understood, but she felt them. Felt the magic settling over her and Adrian, formalizing what was already true. They were mates, partners, bound in ways that transcended politics or duty. When Malus released their hands, Adrian pulled Alara close and kissed her before the entire court. It was not tentative or political. It was claiming, possessive, a declaration that she was his, and he was hers, and anyone who challenged that would face them both. The court erupted in cheers this time, genuine celebration replacing the tension that had gripped them for weeks. There would be a feast, music, dancing. But first, there was one more thing that needed to happen. The trials. 63 conspirators had been captured or surrendered in the aftermath of the battles. They waited in the dungeons, awaiting judgment. Adrian and Alara heard each case together, sitting in their twin thrones, dispensing justice as a unit. The true fanatics, those who had participated willingly in murders and plots, were executed swiftly. Others who had been coerced or deceived were offered clemency in exchange for service. Some would work to rebuild damaged villages. Others would serve terms as laborers on crown projects. The goal was not vengeance, but restoration. The most surprising moment came when they discovered that 3 of the captured conspirators were themselves Silverborn. Survivors like Alara, who had been found and recruited by Draven with lies about retaking their heritage. They were young, confused, and deeply ashamed when they learned the truth. Alara pardoned them all, offered them places in the castle, opportunities to learn about their true history. 2 accepted, crying with relief. The 3rd chose to leave the kingdom entirely, too traumatized by what he had done. Alara let him go with coin and supplies, knowing some wounds took time to heal. The trials took 3 days. When they finished, Adrian turned to Alara with exhaustion clear on his face. "Is it always this complicated? Ruling? I have only been doing it for 3 days," Alara pointed out. "But I suspect yes." They retreated to Adrian's chambers, which were now their shared chambers. The space had been expanded, redecorated to include silver along with the black and gold. It felt right, balanced. Alara stood at the window, looking out over the kingdom spread below the castle. So much had changed. A month ago, she had been a laundress. Now she was a queen. But the weight of it, the responsibility, was beginning to sink in. "I do not know if I can do this," she admitted quietly. "I was not trained for it. I do not know how to rule, how to make decisions that affect thousands of lives." Adrian came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Neither did I. When my father died, and I inherited the throne at 24, I made mistakes, many of them. But you learn, and you do not have to do it alone." He rested his chin on her shoulder. "We are partners now, truly. Your strengths balance my weaknesses. My experience guides your instincts. Together, we will be better than either of us alone." Alara leaned back against him, feeling safe for the first time in what felt like forever. "What happens now?" "Now, we rebuild," Adrian said. "We restore your family's reputation. We find the other silver survivors and bring them home if they wish it. We reform the laws that allowed Omegas to be treated as less than people. We create something new, and we do it together," Alara finished. "Always together." They stood there for a long time, watching the moon rise over their kingdom, feeling the mate bond settle into something peaceful and permanent. There would be challenges ahead, other threats, political complications. But they would face them as they had faced Draven and the Purists, united. The next morning, Alara woke to find Adrian already up, standing over a table covered in maps and documents. He looked up when she stirred, a slight smile crossing his face. "I have been thinking about your suggestion. The reforms." He gestured to the papers. "I want your input on these proposals. Changes to inheritance laws, protections for Omegas, redistribution of the land seized from the Silver family." Alara joined him at the table, scanning the documents. They were comprehensive, thoughtful, addressing issues she had seen firsthand during her years as a servant. This will anger some of the alpha families. They benefit from the current system. Let them be angry, Adrian said flatly. They will adapt or lose their positions. We are building something better, remember? Over the following weeks, they threw themselves into governance. Milas became their official advisor, bringing centuries of wisdom to their decisions. Torin was promoted to High Commander, responsible for rebuilding the military and rooting out any remaining purist sympathizers. And Alara found 3 other silver survivors, brought them to the castle, gave them choices about their futures. One was a middle-aged man who had spent his life as a blacksmith. He wanted only a quiet life and a small stipend, which Alara granted gladly. The other 2 were younger, a woman and a man, both eager to learn about their heritage. They stayed at the castle, became part of Alara's small circle. The truth about the Silver family's execution was made public. Monuments were erected to honor those who had died. The history books were rewritten, this time with accuracy. Children would grow up knowing the truth, not the lies Draven had perpetuated. And slowly, the kingdom began to heal. 8 months after her coronation, Alara discovered she was pregnant. The realization came one morning when she could not keep breakfast down, and Milas examined her with knowing eyes. Twins, the old healer announced with satisfaction. I can sense 2 distinct heartbeats, strong ones. Alara's hand went to her still flat stomach, wonder filling her. She had never allowed herself to imagine children, had never thought she would have the opportunity. But now, carrying Adrian's children, carrying the future of 2 bloodlines, it felt like everything had come full circle. When she told Adrian, he lifted her off her feet and spun her around, laughing with pure joy. Then he became immediately overprotective, insisting she rest more, eat more, avoid stress. Alara tolerated it because she knew it came from love, but she also made it clear she would not become an invalid just because she was pregnant. The kingdom celebrated the announcement. There would be heirs, children carrying both silver and shadow blood. The prophecy was fulfilling itself in ways no one had anticipated. Alara stood in the throne room one evening, hands on her growing belly, looking at the twin thrones that symbolized everything they had built. She thought about the frightened girl in the dungeon who had believed she would die at dawn, how far she had traveled, how much she had changed. Adrian came up beside her, as he always did, drawn to her by the mate bond that never faded. What are you thinking about? About how strange fate is, Alara said. Not so long ago, I was nobody. Now I am a queen carrying the future. It feels like a dream sometimes. If it is a dream, then we are dreaming it together, Adrian said. He placed his hand over hers on her belly, and I would not want it any other way. They stood together as the moon rose over the castle, 2 rulers united by love and destiny, ready to face whatever the future held, because they had learned the most important lesson. Alone, they were strong. Together, they were unbreakable. Chapter 8. Legacy of Silver. The festival celebrating the union of the bloodlines had been Alara's idea, but it had grown beyond anything she had imagined. A year and a half after that terrifying night in the dungeons, when she thought she would die at dawn, the entire kingdom gathered to witness the culmination of everything they had fought for. The castle grounds were transformed. Banners of black and silver hung from every wall, and the courtyard where she had first transformed was filled with music and laughter. Merchants from across the realm set up stalls. Performers entertained crowds. The smell of roasted meat and fresh bread filled the air. For 3 days there would be celebration, a declaration that the dark times were truly over. Alara walked through the crowds in late afternoon, her belly round and heavy with the twins she carried. She was in the final weeks of pregnancy now, moving slowly, one hand always resting on the curve where her children grew. Malus had warned her to rest, but Alara refused to hide away. These were her people. She wanted to be among them. People parted for her as she passed, but not out of fear. They smiled, reached out to touch her hand or her belly with gentle reverence. Children ran up to her with flowers. Elderly women offered blessings. It was overwhelming and beautiful, and Alara felt tears prick her eyes more than once. Adrian found her near the musicians, standing with one hand pressed to her lower back. He took her arm immediately, his expression concerned. "You should be sitting. Resting." "I have been sitting all morning," Alara protested. "I wanted to see the festival, to be part of it." "Then let me walk with you," Adrian said, his tone making it clear this was not negotiable. "And if you tire even slightly, we return to our chambers." They walked together through the celebration, and Alara marveled at the changes a year had brought. The Omega reforms she had championed were law now. No shifter could be bought or sold. All had the right to own property, to choose their own path. It had caused upheaval among some of the old families, but most had adapted. Those who had not found their influence waning rapidly. Venna appeared from the crowd, accompanied by a young beta male Alara recognized from one of the southern villages. Her sister looked radiant, healthy, happy in ways she had never been before. She had taken her lands and title and built a school, a place where Omega children could learn to read and write, could be taught skills beyond servitude. "The children wanted me to give you this," Venna said, presenting Alara with a carefully woven crown of wildflowers. "They made it themselves. They wanted the Silver Queen to wear it at her festival." Alara accepted the gift with a full heart, letting Venna place it on her head over the silver circlet she wore. "Tell them I will treasure it, and that they are all invited to visit the castle whenever they wish. They will never stop talking about this." Venna laughed. She touched Alara's belly gently. "How are my niece and nephew?" "Active," Alara said with a wince, as one of the twins kicked particularly hard. "Malus says they are both healthy. Strong heartbeats. One might be alpha, she thinks. The other is harder to determine." "They will be remarkable," Venna said with certainty. "With you and Adrian as parents, how could they be anything else?" As evening approached, labor pains began. Alara felt the first contraction while standing near the feast tables, and her hand tightened on Adrian's arm. He knew immediately, his entire body going tense. "It is time?" "I think so," Alara said, breathing through the pain. "But it is early. Milas said I had another week at least. Babies come when they are ready," Adrian said, already guiding her toward the castle. "Not when healers predict." Milas was summoned immediately. She examined Alara in their chambers and nodded with satisfaction. "The children are coming. It will be hours yet, but they are definitely coming." The next hours were a blur of pain and effort. Alara had witnessed births before, had helped deliver servants' children, but experiencing it herself was entirely different. The contractions came in waves, each stronger than the last. Adrian stayed with her throughout, holding her hand, offering what comfort he could through the mate bond. Milas worked with calm efficiency, coaching Alara through each stage. "The silver bloodline has always had easy births," she said encouragingly. "Your body was made for this. Trust it." As the moon reached its peak, Alara felt the overwhelming urge to push. She bore down with everything she had, and moments later, a baby's cry filled the room. Milas lifted the child, cleaning it quickly. "A boy," she announced. "Strong lungs, perfect health. And look at his eyes." The baby's eyes, when they opened, were golden, exactly like Adrian's. The shadow bloodline expressing itself clearly. "One more," Milas said, passing the boy to a waiting attendant. "The second is coming now." The second birth was faster, easier. Another cry joined the first, and Milas laughed with delight. "A girl! And she bears the silver mark." When they placed both babies on Alara's chest, she looked down at them through tears. The boy was dark-haired and golden-eyed. The girl had Alara's dark hair, but the distinctive glacial blue eyes of the silver line. Both bloodlines represented, both strong and healthy. Adrian knelt beside the bed, his hand hovering over his children as if afraid to touch them. "They are perfect," he whispered. "Absolutely perfect." "What will we name them?" Alara asked. They had discussed names for months, but now that the moment was here, the decision felt momentous. These children would carry the future of 2 dynasties. Their names would be spoken for generations. "Talon," Adrian said, looking at his son. "For the boy, it means strength and protection in the old tongue." And Aria, Ilara added, gazing at her daughter. For song, for beauty, for hope. The names felt right. They presented the twins to the court the next day, during the final celebration of the festival. Malus held them both, lifting them toward the moon that hung bright in the afternoon sky. Behold the children of prophecy, she announced, born of silver and shadow, united in blood. The ancient words spoke of this day. When the lost line returns and joins with the reigning house, peace will reign for generations. These children are that promise made flesh. The twin thrones reacted to the baby's presence, both pulsing with light, black and silver intertwining. It was as if the sacred stones themselves recognized the importance of this moment. The crowd erupted in celebration. Ilara stood beside Adrian on the dais, watching her people rejoice, and felt a profound sense of completion. Everything she had endured, all the pain and fear and struggle, had led to this, to a future where her children would grow up knowing peace, knowing who they were, never having to hide their heritage or suppress their gifts. In the weeks that followed, life settled into a new rhythm. Ilara and Adrian took turns with night feedings, both of them bleary-eyed and exhausted but happier than they had ever been. The twins were demanding but delightful, already showing distinct personalities. Talon was serious and watchful. Arya was curious and vocal. Milas visited daily, monitoring their development, teaching Ilara what to expect as they grew. They will both be powerful, she predicted. The boy carries alpha strength plus the Shadow Line's combat instincts. The girl has silver gifts awakening already. I can sense it. She will be remarkable. The kingdom prospered under their dual rule. The reforms continued, slowly but steadily. Ilara established councils where Omegas had voices, where grievances could be heard. Adrian rebuilt the military into something that protected rather than oppressed. Together, they forged alliances with neighboring kingdoms, showing strength through unity rather than aggression. 3 years passed, then 5. The twins grew into bright, energetic children who ran through the castle with wild abandon. Talon showed signs of his father's warrior nature, always play-fighting with the guards. Arya demonstrated her mother's gifts early, once commanding an entire room full of adults to freeze when she was angry about being denied dessert. Venna married her beta and had children of her own, expanding her school to 3 locations across the kingdom. The silver survivors they had found became valued members of court, their unique gifts strengthening the realm. And the throne room, with its twin seats of black and silver stone, became a symbol recognized across the world. On the 5th anniversary of her coronation, Ilara stood in that throne room with Adrian, watching Talon and Arya play at the base of the dais. She thought about the frightened laundress who had scrubbed these floors, never dreaming she would one day rule from above them. "Do you ever miss it?" Adrian asked quietly. "The simpler life, before you knew what you were." Ilara considered the question seriously. "Sometimes," she admitted. "Life was easier when I was invisible, when I had no responsibilities beyond washing linens and keeping Venna fed. But it was also smaller, emptier. I did not know who I was or what I could become. And now? Now I know exactly who I am," Ilara said, watching her children laugh. "I am the daughter of a line thought extinct, the mate of a warrior king, the mother of the future. I am someone who survived impossible odds and built something better from the ashes. I would not trade that for anything." Adrian pulled her close, the mate bond humming contentedly between them. "Neither would I. You are the best thing that ever happened to this kingdom, the best thing that ever happened to me." Years later, when Talon and Arya were old enough to ask, they would sit together and tell the story. How a frightened Omega had been forced to transform to prove her innocence, and instead revealed a destiny no one expected. How the throne itself cracked open to acknowledge her blood. How everything changed in that single moment under the full moon. "Was it scary?" Arya would always ask, her blue eyes wide. "Terrifying," Ilara would admit, "but also necessary. Sometimes we have to be brave even when we are afraid. Sometimes we have to trust that we are stronger than we believe." "And you fell in love?" Talon would add, trying to sound skeptical but clearly romantic underneath. "We did," Adrian would confirm. "Your mother saved me as much as I saved her. We saved each other." The children would grow up hearing that story, understanding that their parents' love had not been easy or simple, but hard-won and precious, that their very existence was a miracle born from tragedy and triumph combined. And when they eventually took the twin thrones themselves, decades in the future, they would remember, would strive to honor the legacy their parents built, the legacy of the Silver Queen who rose from nothing to reclaim her birthright, the legacy of the Shadow King who chose justice over tradition, the legacy of two rulers who proved that strength came not from domination, but from partnership. The prophecy had been right. Peace did reign for generations, because Alara and Adrian had laid a foundation built not on fear or lies, but on truth and love, and the unshakable belief that everyone, regardless of their birth, deserved dignity and choice. It was a legacy worth fighting for, worth dying for, but more importantly, it was a legacy worth living for. And as Alara stood in the throne room on that anniversary, watching her children play, feeling her mate's arms around her, she knew with absolute certainty that despite everything it had cost, despite all the pain and fear and loss, it had been worth it, every single moment. The end.